test I always said to myself was, if they go back and watch it again, then they'll have a completely different perspective.
Why didn't you question it?
No, Mr. Ravenscroft. Why didn't you?
My character didn't know how to even process or explain to herself or to other people what had gone on all those years ago.
It's important to know that first 6 episodes we've been hearing everybody's voices.
Yes.
And now we're going to hear her voice.
There's no one way. You know, there's signs, there's symptoms, there's certain ways of accessing the past that frequently occur with people who've gone through a traumatic experience. But there's no textbook to say this is the correct and accessible way to reveal that bit of information.
Part of the challenge of Disclaimer, it was how not to reveal, but at the same time, how not to cheat by hiding information.
Yes. No, I was reading a lot of books about people who had been sexually abused, people who have been physically or psychologically abused, and how that affects their memory of it. You remember these things in fragments, and that's why so often women's voices are not believed, because they seem to often contradict things they've said before, because memory doesn't work in a linear way. So you're watching her being reactivated, but yet we're expecting her to behave like a heroine. You know, and I think that's an enormous pressure to put on somebody who's been through what she's been through. It often takes people a really, really long time to even approach being able to talk about these things. Your wife couldn't fathom what I was feeling.
Nancy.
Shut up, I'm talking. I've heard enough from you. Finally, this is Catherine's point of view. The recollection's much more fragmentary, but she had to unpack it to understand her role within it and kind of eradicate that sense of shame. I mean, does that ever go away? I don't know.
To make quick judgments is something that is engraved in humanity for centuries and centuries. There's this encouragement of take a quick judgment. I mean, in social media, immediately you have the like or not like. A lot of these judgments come out of pure emotion without any stop to consider and contemplate for a moment.
We're all looking for the truth, aren't we? Sometimes we think we've got a hold of it, and nope. We were wrong about that. We're all subject to gullibility to varying degrees.
I got halfway through and I kind of pushed the script away. And I thought, I really don't like this woman. And of course, as the story unfolded, I found myself, I guess, being invited or forming judgments very quickly.
Just struck me on the last episode how susceptible we all are to stories and to ideas and beliefs and suggestions.
It's quite shocking, that moment. I had to kind of go and have a cup of tea and think, well, hang on, I've been working on an assumption that A and B equals C, and they don't at all. How can you be so sure it was an accident? That's one of the overriding themes of the whole piece. Our inbuilt prejudice, our very uncomfortably easy ability to prejudge.
Of course, within any story, we're never really not judging, and this kind of shows us the destructive nature of judgment.
You don't deserve us. Now get out.
If there is any lesson that I would take from it, it would be to give somebody the space to talk about something that might not be easy to talk about, and to try and pick up on the signs.
I don't think I've ever made something that step by step in performing it, I was acutely aware of where the audience might be at with the story.
We want scenes coming out of the novel to have a heightened cinematic approach to frame that part of the story. The important part of it was about stating a big contrast between the novel with reality. It's radically different between one version and the other. You have in the book this seductive Catherine with this red swimming costume, while you have in the reality a more reserved Catherine with a one-piece swimming suit. You see in the hotel room, in the ceiling, you have this kind of erotic fresco of Greek gods, while in Catherine's memory is a reproduction of the death of St. Catherine.
Kate and Alfonso really included me in the process of finding the differences between what we were calling fictional Catherine and real Catherine.
was a story of contrast. Jonathan, as we see him in the second half, he's a real ball of anger and hatred. I suppose if Jonathan number 1 is the deer in the headlights, Jonathan number 2 is the car coming at the deer.
The test I always said to myself was, if they go back and watch it again, then they'll have a completely different view, or they'll be able to see maybe a very small, seemingly inconsequential gesture or moment or connection or avoidance, and then they might be confronted with the prejudice that they entered the story with, but not in a way that's manipulative.
Oh, God.
If you think about it, one of the reasons she has a difficulty telling the truth to Stephen is out of compassion. The same reason she didn't tell the truth to Nancy. You know, it's because they already went through a trauma and she doesn't want to make things more painful for them.
You just have to know it's not easy, Mrs. Brigstock. It's actually very, very complicated.
Complicated? No, it's not complicated. Oh. I'm dying.
When you unearth these things, you re-experience them. And so the shock that you experience is as great as the moment in which it happened. And then when your nearest and dearest don't believe you, then that's almost another traumatic experience.
I know I should forgive you. But the truth is I can't. Because you're managing the idea of me having been violated by someone far more easily than the idea of that someone bringing me pleasure.
Really at the centre of this story is Nicholas and what happens to the children of those people who've experienced trauma. What's painful about that is that they do deeply love one another. They just don't fully understand what has happened to them as a mother and a son.
When he learns that his mother didn't do the terrible things that he thought, it's like another stage of grief. It's another stage of shame. But it's an overwhelming sense of love and everything is okay.